is Torin Jeffries, and I'm so glad we're actually getting a chance to sit down and have this
Yeah,
talk.
me too. It's been a minute.
We've been trying to set it up for a while. And we got a chance to chat at Louisiana Beach Week a little bit. And when I got a hold of your story and kind of started hearing you talk about some of the obstacles that have created kind of more of a spiritual journey that is not always typical in athletics and volleyball, I got super interested in, how it came to be and like how it's affected your game, and then even bigger than that, your life. So that's kind of what I wanted to get at today. So tell me a little bit about how that journey started.
So it started when I was 10. I was just out messing around on my old Razor scooter, just kind of fell off of it, tweaked my ankle a little bit, nothing that you would think could be, life altering, if you will. Just oh, go see a doctor, oh, you rolled your ankle, just throw some ice on it, here's some exercises, get back to it in a week. You're 10 years old and you bounce back from anything, right? A month or two later, nothing got better, it got worse. So they're all right, let's put you in a cast. There's a whole diagnostic process. I mean, everybody knows somebody that's been through, some form of diagnostic process in our medical system. And then I ended up finding a specialist who was actually familiar with my condition. It turns out I was born with an extra bone in my foot. So when I rolled my ankle, there was a piece of cartilage that was in between that extra bone and everything else in my heel. So what ended up happening was when I rolled it, I snapped that piece of cartilage, and it allowed over time the extra bone to kind of grow together with the other ones. I believe the technical term was a navocanicular tarsal coalition or something. Basically, it just translates to a fused heel.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So I had a couple surgeries. I had one when I was 10, and it was kind of a guessing game, right? They didn't want to take too much of the adhesion out because then I ended up with a floppy foot. Had that done. Came back. I remember when I was playing baseball at the time, when I was about 11, 12, and I got a hit, ran to first base, and I looked over at my mom and I was like, no, it didn't, it's not better. Had another surgery. Second one took a lot better. I got super lucky with the physical therapist that I had at Muncie Valley Hospital in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
He should have been working for a professional sports team somewhere. Glad I had him.
Awesome.
He worked with my dad. He helped my dad with my herniated discs, all kinds of stuff. The dude was way more progressive for especially the area that I came from, and also just kind of ahead of his time, kind of the way that he thought. So he got me up and going. There was just a lot of maintenance things that I have to be very on top of regularly, and still to this day. But again, you're young, you think it's fixed. And then insurance eventually, covers so many visits for so long.
Totally.
So I was good up through high school, when I really started to notice things started to get harder for me physically. I was about 17 or 18, and I had been out of therapy and whatnot for probably a couple years. But again, I was young, so I was still going through puberty. My body healed really quick, and I come from a very physically strong family on both sides, so I definitely am able to a lot of people in sports, sports medicine, they say a lot of the best athletes aren't necessarily the best functional movers. They're extremely strong and they're the best compensators.
Gosh, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. So I was overcompensating definitely a lot in my right leg, the way that my gait was. There's just a whole slew of things that I could get into from a functional movement standpoint. That
this is one of the points of yours in my story. It's oddly similar. So yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So that kind of led, well, again, I just kind of didn't really think anything of it. And then I went to go play, D3 basketball in college. And that's when I really started to notice, okay, something's wrong with me. I don't know what it is, but again, I knew absolutely nothing, right?
Yeah.
Besides the stuff I should be doing. I did my stretches and did all that, but I had no idea it was actually transpiring in my body, over time, how much I was really messing myself up. And since we're on me, in college, this is kind of a piece that fits into the puzzle as well. So that kind of, threw me, because I was oh man, basketball has been my life. That's all I did growing up. I just played for 3-4 hours a day. you know, that's where all my friends were. Like I traveled around all summer in high school doing like the whole AAU circuits. Like it was, you know, some of the best times of my life. So there was a combination of some family stuff that, and just not really having like a support system and not asking for help. That kind of led me down a road of like, you know, some like a lot of depression. You know, I had the whole like suicidal thoughts thing. Like I still have some scars on my arms from, you know, where I did some cutting, like that kind of stuff.
Do you feel like that part of that was kind of an identity?
Yeah, I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
Like I lost my identity, if you will, because
Yeah,
I've been a
with the-
basketball player my whole
right.
life. That's what I identified with, you
Totally.
know. Went to therapy. That definitely helped with like the emotional side, but then also too another piece of it is my brother got involved with this nutrition company that kind of like flipped everything I thought I knew about, you know, how to eat like on its head. And
Name of the company?
I actually don't know
Don't
if I can
remember.
actually say
Yeah.
legally
I'm just-
and like
Okay,
you know what I mean?
I'm just curious about like what some of the things that flipped for you.
Well, it was just more of it was more. I finally got like an education as to like how certain things actually like work in your body and how.
So more than
you
just
like,
rules.
more than just rules, but actual like broader picture of like this is how it works.
Okay.
This is what you should be doing.
Gotcha.
So I totally flipped my diet, and like now, you know, freaking, I'll probably just from saying that like get a bunch of Instagram ads about stuff for like your gut health and whatnot, you know.
Right,
But again, like
we're all being
we
tracked and followed.
had like no idea about any of that kind of stuff, right? And even still, like to this day, there's always new stuff to learn, right?
For sure.
But I flipped that, and I noticed that the mental side of things definitely got a lot better for me. You know, and I have to be really careful. Like, you know, I bartend, and I still like to, you know, like to drink and do all that. But I have to be careful that, you know, I don't do too much of it because I can really throw myself out of whack. But again, I've been doing it for the last like 8-9 years now, so I'm pretty in tune with when I start to feel that certain way. I'm like, okay, like I need to really like ease off and go back to those habits, right?
So you can feel that gut brain connection, basically.
Yeah, like I can feel when I start to get like that weird thought process. And you know, sometimes it's just extenuating circumstances of life. But that's something I know that I can always go back to, is like really going back to the habits that I created for myself and knowing that it's okay, like this is how I make that better.
Okay.
So I actually ended up stopping with basketball my junior year. And there was more to it than just, you know, like the physical and like the depression and that kind of stuff. But that's when I noticed, like after I stopped basketball, when I lost the identity, right? And that's when the depression got really bad. And that's when I finally was like, okay, like I need to see somebody about this. So I started my brother was into bodybuilding at the time, and I just started working out. You know, like I just started learning about like, you know, how to train my body, like how to do all these different things. Again, still not to the extent of like really understanding like how like certain joints should be articulating, and, you know, basically I had no idea how to like out of alignment my whole body was.
Because you had limited mobility in that foot.
Right, you know, like I just to walk, like I would throw my one hip, and it's not just like the one side, like, oh, it was your left foot, right? Like you mess up something with your feet, it starts down and it goes all the way up. Like, I mean, I guarantee that has something to do with like why my hands, when I landed, like I, you know, had some hand problems. I've had surgery in my wrist now when I was in college. Like,
so all these signs are coming in.
Like, right, like other things were starting to break down that shouldn't be.
Especially at that young age.
Yeah, exactly.
You're still
like
not
19,
old.
20. Yeah, I have a birthday in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I'll be 29. So again, still, you
what
know,
day?
like the 15th.
15th. Like my good friend's the 15th. I'm the 10th.
So. Okay. Yeah. So that definitely started like the physical side of this journey, was getting into bodybuilding. I actually did a competition my senior year of college. Like, it gave me something else to focus on.
Yeah.
Right. I felt good. Like, you know, I was eating right. Although, don't like bodybuilding. If anyone tries to, please, not a health competition. It is not even close to that. I very distinctly remember there were times I would stand up from my couch and like black out for a split second because I was so like undernourished.
Yeah.
But again,
For definition and all
yeah,
that kind of
just
stuff.
cutting
I've
water
heard a
weight,
woman.
like all that kind of stuff.
I listened to a woman.
It's
tell
nutty.
the same
Like
type of story.
It can mess you up. Like there's actually somebody
It's
I know
homeostasis.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. You're playing with the whole. I mean, again, that's just like the science behind it, though, right?
Right.
Like you're literally a science project for yourself at that point.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I got more into like the physical side. So finished college, moved to California, like literally like the day after. Drove across the country with my mom. Yeah,
Okay.
It was a nice little trip. I made some stops and all that. So I get to California. I'm here for, 6-8 months. Again, I wasn't depressed because I was taking care of my like diet and everything, and like I just had that identity crisis because it's like, I worked for a mortgage company for a little bit, hated it. Like I was like, I've always been an athlete. Like that's what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to be involved in sports somehow, whether it be like the coaching side, the actual playing. And I was like, but I want to find something to play. Like I'm still so young. Like I think I have like a shot at doing something. Met a girl, played beach volleyball. I went and watched her play a tournament one weekend. Was like, oh, that looks like a lot of fun. The next weekend I went to like the local. I was living in Long Beach at the time. Went to the meetup group in Belmont Shore, and the rest is kind of history.
Wow.
Found a coach. Kind of lied to him a little. I was like, oh yeah, I played volleyball before. I was like, yeah, I played like, didn't exist where I grew up besides like gym class.
Yeah.
You had to go to like a bigger school to even.
Certainly not beach volleyball.
Yeah, and it also came with that stigma too. I was like, oh, it's a girl sport. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So I picked up volleyball and, started playing like, again, like because
kind of
just started
just for fun
at first. For about the first like 8 months to a year that I played, it was mostly just for fun. Like I got some coaching because I wanted to learn, so I could like at least like just the finer like some of like the basic skills.
Like the technique.
I was like I need to really just know what I'm doing. So I basically taught myself how to bump a ball just in my mom's gross like parking structure, just against the wall. I'd come out, my arms would be just dark
peppered.
from all the soot and stuff. Like the ball I had was just disgusting. It was. It made my mom a little unhappy sometimes. So I checked some stuff in the house, but because I was staying with her at the time.
Gotcha.
So after about 8 months of that, I was like, you know what? Like I want to see what I can do with this. So I started training more seriously. It was probably 2 years in that I actually played my first CBVA. I actually won one. I won a B.
Okay.
Like after about like 2.5 years, that 1 year. So fast forward another like year and a half. I hit that point where I'm like, something's holding me back physically because I know, I could dunk a basketball when I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
And it just kind of deteriorated over time.
Yeah.
And I was like, something's not right. Like I do all the things you're supposed to do, right? Like I'm lifting weights, I stretch, I eat right, like I take good care of myself. Like what is the missing piece that's here? So again, for whatever reason, it's just one of those like right place, right time. I get introduced to this chiropractor. Her name's Lisette Beam. She's one of my favorite people in the world. We actually have like a beautiful friendship.
Yeah.
I can go to her with anything. She actually comes to me and asks me questions about athletes and certain like movement things now. And again, like I'm not a movement specialist. I just I've spent so much time in training rooms and on operating tables and all that. Like you should just hand me a PhD, right?
I know. Believe me, I'm a school of hard knocks learner too. I get it.
So I start working with her, and that's when I start to realize like how effed up I am.
Yeah.
Like my hips super jammed up. I had my ankle. I knew my ankle mobility in this one. It's always been an ongoing process, but I didn't know about all the other stuff. Like shoulder pain caused by like my contralateral side, just all kinds of stuff. And I've been going to her for about 2 years now.
Okay.
And we never even thought of this, but we would have taken like day one pictures to like where I'm at now. It is night and day with,
Wow.
you know, the range of motion I have in like my ankles, the way my hips articulate, like, but her knowledge and just going by just feel alone, I was like, oh, like I can, like this wants to do this and this.
Mhm.
It really led me to seek answers. So I started looking at anything I could find on, you know, like human functional movement, about my condition. If there's anybody
Mhm.
that, you know, had a story similar to mine, which apparently my condition was super rare. Like it doesn't happen to a lot of people. There's very little literature on it.
Okay.
So I stumbled across this group called the Foot Collective. It's like a coalition of like chiropractors, therapists, and whatnot. They're based out of Canada. And this was actually, so this would have been during the whole like pandemic lockdown
Okay.
that I kind of discovered this, because I really had the time
Yeah.
to like really explore like what was out there. And I took this seminar. You know, it was a pre-recorded thing, like 6 hours long. And while I was watching this, I was just like, oh my God, like literally everything that they're saying applies to me. Like how when something gets messed up, like knee pain, it's probably not your knees, it's probably something in your hips or your feet. And to me, like these light bulbs just started going off. I was just like, holy shit. Like
Yeah.
I started doing a lot of things in the seminar, and like kind of like I bought into like their system and like their different techniques. Like I have a balance beam at home. It's literally like a 2x2 like metal pipe.
Okay.
But the theory on it is, right, if you stand on it, in order to keep yourself upright and not fall, it creates a problem for your hips to figure out. So by positioning your feet certain ways, standing different ways, like you're creating a new puzzle that your body has to figure out.
Neurologically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got to where that's how I learned how to think more functional as, okay, like what's really happening right now with me and how can I make it better?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I can stand on balance beam, I can feel something, I'm like, okay, like I need to work on like the external rotation of my hip or whatever it may be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of self-diagnostic.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where we're very lacking in like sports medicine right now today, is like there's a lot of dependency on someone else to kind of solve the problem for you.
Right.
It's like, oh, my back hurts. Well, if you go to your doctor and you say, oh, my back hurts, they're going to be like, okay, back pain, here's a prescription for PT for your back.
Mm-hmm.
I had this problem. I
Yeah.
I went to a PT for a little bit when I was out here not that long ago, before I kind of stumbled upon that stuff. And they were only allowed to work with my left foot because that's what was prescribed.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, I can feel this stuff in my knee, like in my hip. Like, can you help me out? They're like, sorry, like, we can't. And I was just like, all right.
But it's all connected.
Exactly.
It's all connected.
It's don't get me started on the whole. That's a whole other 5-hour conversation with me. Just like family stuff. Like it's a
well,
bit.
that's that's the kind of stuff every time, because I saw you at yoga the other morning.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I step on that mat, what I realize is that what is going on in my body has a direct story to what's going on in my life, what has gone on in my
Mm-hmm.
life, how things are stored in our bodies, and how, until you have that realization, everything feels like it's super random and everything like this is happening over there and this is happening over there. But the truth is, like, that's happening. This is stuck in your hips. This is like...
So it's interesting you say that, because there was a chiropractor I used to go see in Long Beach. It was just like very hard to get in. His name was Dr. Ward.
Uh-huh.
So his father began this line of research that linked spinal curvature to emotional trauma. And I mean, he showed me some x-rays of people who had been through some serious, like, you couldn't even imagine, like, the scenarios that they had to live through.
Wow.
And how bent and curved. I mean, these things literally look like C's, like S's, like it was some gnarly. And I this is a story that I will never forget. So I walk in there, and my mom was just visiting him, right? Because she had something with like a disc in her back or whatever. Uh-huh. And she has it recorded on her phone. So I just walk across the waiting room, and I go, like, sit in a chair. And he's like, oh, like, your son has, like, a slight, like, I think it was like left curvature in his spine, which indicates like female dependency. He definitely has like a strong need for like female approval. And he asked me, he's like, does he seek you out to like, like make sure like he's doing things right? And I was just like, dude, that is scary because I don't even know who you are. I've never said a word to you.
Yeah.
And
he
I
just
was
read
like,
that in my body.
yeah, he just read that from just how I walked across the room. And I was like, okay, that is definitely another piece of like where my curiosity started coming. Is like, okay, all this stuff, it's like it's all one and the same. It's just it presents itself differently, whether it be like physically, emotionally. But I think that the emotions and the physical are just so intertwined.
Yeah.
That so again, like that's kind of also too where the spiritual side of my journey started, because I was aware of like my mental health stuff. I knew I had to keep that under wraps. I knew I had to do a lot more physically, and I had to find something else to help me get to that next level that I knew I was capable of. So that's kind of how I found this. And then again, pandemic, lockdown, a lot of time in my studio. I started watching the Magical Egypt series, and I don't know if anyone's like super familiar with it that may watch this, but
I'll check it out.
This stuff is mind-blowing.
Okay.
Like
YouTube?
No, it's an actual series. You can buy it.
Okay.
It's just called Magical Egypt. Like there's three seasons of it now.
Okay.
But it basically goes into the like symbolisms and stuff that's hidden. It's not just Egypt. Like the first season's basically on Egypt, and then they're like, oh my god, like dude, all these parallels between all these different religions and cultures. Like the symbolism is the same. I'll just use like the idea of like the snake. That's associated with like the spine, or like it's in every religion. It's in Christianity. It's in Hinduism. It's all over the place. So it turns out that what they're finding is everything that is hidden in, like whether it be like the hieroglyphs, the actual physical structure of different temples and everything, is all related to human anatomy. It's all related to human anatomy and a cipher for like human consciousness. And I thought about it. I was like, okay, so Egypt, we'll just use it as the example because it's like the most well-known one. Like it started in its prime and then declined. But before that, like we have no history or anything. So it's just kind of accepted as like, oh, they were great. And then it just kind of, went to shit. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why is nobody questioning that, So I just started doing a little bit more digging and reading all these different books. Like I'm actually reading a book on like Kundalini right now and like that.
Okay.
I'm telling you, if you get into it and like start to really pay attention to like what these people were really smart. Like they were brilliant. I mean, we're literally talking about like their statues are like references of like brain anatomy. Like it like through your brainstem, like the Eye of Ra and like all that is like your third eye is actually a depiction of like so you're like diencephalon, your pons, and it's like three of the in your hypothalamus. Like it's like the three key structures in your brain that are like super important for. Your pituitary gland, your hypothalamus, and I forget the other one. Okay. But anyway, so I that's where the spiritual thing really started to come together for me within like the last like year and a half, because I was like, all right, like there's all these bits and pieces, especially in Western culture, that we kind of like ignore. Like you go to a gym, they'll be like, make sure you breathe when you're working out. It's like, okay, but it's like, all right, why are we breathing? Like, how should you be breathing? Why is that important? Like, what does that do for you?
Yeah. How does that relate to your nervous system? How does that relate to then how you show up on the court?
Right, exactly. Like learning to, really just like control that. So as you can see, there's a lot of things that have kind of like, I'm trying to like mush together and figure out. But again, like.
And they all started with a sense of physical discomfort.
Right, exactly.
And then built off of that, which every athlete has faced at some point. It's just a question of how far you down that road you go, and then the support that you have to go down that road, right? I mean,
and don't get me wrong, there's definitely people that I try and explain this to, and it's like it's so all over the place for me right now because I'm still like in the midst of like working through it and figuring out how like it all like works for me.
Yeah.
But it's helped me a lot in learning about like myself, just what spirituality actually is, because there's like a weird connotation that goes along with that.
Yeah.
You know, and like some people are like, dude, you're nuts, like, you know, and like, you don't know what you're talking about. Just, but in terms of like how it's helped me as an athlete, I mean, so they talk about, you know, if you read books on like sports psychology or whatever, right? Like there's the three things. There's, you know, your head game, your physical game, and, you know, like your environment, right? But what they don't realize is like your head game has a lot of people don't realize it's like, or they do, but like learning to mitigate it.
Right.
Right? Like, you know, there's a book that I love, it's called Mind Gym.
Okay. I have heard of that. I haven't read it.
Yeah, it's a really good book on sports psychology, and like there's a chapter that talks about like what level of excitement like do you like operate at your best at,
absolutely.
right?
And figuring out that window, that zone.
Mm-hmm.
That,
exactly. Yeah. Like for me, I like if you go like 1 out of 10, I have to be like a 2 or a 3.
Yeah.
Like I have to be like very low, like almost like you're just like a robot. Like you know, like very little celebration, just move on to the next. I mean, but especially with a sport like beach volleyball, where you don't, if you're having a bad day, there's no sub.
No,
you know,
you're like, okay.
It's like what feels like a long day is actually a very short day, but it feels like an eternity.
Right. Point after point of
just,
not a good day.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's rough, but learning how all of that kind of plays together is like a really interesting journey to kind of embark on, because it's different for everybody. You know, like most people aren't going to have my extreme, you know, like physical limitations like over time. But everyone's had, you know, their bout with like depression or whatever it may be. And
I feel like when you learn that place where you kind of learn where you can find that flow, right? And you kind of know your zone of tolerance and where you compete the best, you get yourself out of that mindset of like following sets of rules, whether that's on the court or out. Like it gets you away from being a perfectionist. It gets you away from thinking about your limitations. You know, you're connecting with your body more than just like, okay, this is how, like, I'm going to shuffle right. And then I'm going to, you know, it's like, you'll never hit that level of high performance if you're just trying to follow a set of rules versus like
you know, being really in tune with what's like, again,
it's like being overdoing, right? I mean, instead of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know, exactly. It's like I try and meditate almost every day.
Okay.
And one of the big things is like learning to, you know, clear your mind and just be present and okay with like what's going on in your body like at that time. It's like something as simple as just remembering to breathe. Like how many times a day does someone actually catch themselves like, oh wow, like I was just holding my breath for no reason, like I'm breathing super shallow.
I see my kids do it.
Yeah, it's just like how
I have 2 shallow breathers. I'm like, you guys, like take a breath.
Like just let it all out,
right?
You know. I make it a point, like even while I'm at work, to like try and just focus on my breathing, because it gives you that ability to stay calm, to actually realize. I mean, I work in a crazy fast-paced environment.
Totally.
I mean, I've worked in bars for, you know, the last like 5-6 years, and you know, I've bartended.
Yeah.
Like so, I have to know like what the hell is going on in the whole restaurant. Yeah. You know, I've got people trying to have a conversation with me. I've got, you know, like 10 drinks that I need to make. Like, and, you know, people have questions. They're like, oh, like, what are you doing here? What's this? What's this with this? Especially since I started working at a craft bar. So being able to, like, balance all of that, like, I see people that get tense in the service industry all the time because they don't remember to breathe.
Yeah.
They get so caught up in, like, what they think they should be doing. It's like, hey, like, you're just living your life right now. Like, chill out. Like, you can't change anything right now. All you can do is control. And again, all these, like, things that sound so cliche.
But they're true. Okay, so they're cliche for a reason. Like,
no, 100%.
Those things, you know, control your controllables, but all of those things.
How many people, though, do you think just hear that and they just totally take it for granted?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, just be present in the moment and just like accept what's happening. And they're like, okay, yeah. I got 100 things I have to do. It's like, no, like the process of learning how to do that, like that's how you like grow, right? Like that's how you deal with adversity.
And they're baby steps, right?
Oh, like you're not gonna do it all in one day.
You don't even notice it.
Oh,
like if you're on that path, like you don't even notice it, and then, but it opens up so slowly, and then, it takes years. It takes.
It's a lifetime.
It's a lifelong journey. But even to see just a little bit of progress, it's like you can't be looking for the progress.
Exactly.
Right? You just have. It's the curiosity that leads you, and then you all of a sudden.
Right.
You have a feel. Something starts happening. Right. For me, it first was on my yoga mat.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was gonna say, like you go to yoga, you know what it's like to sit in a class, and especially you go to Soho. I love Soho. That's where I go to. But you sit in a class, and like one day you go to the same class twice, right?
Yeah.
One day everything is great. You feel like you're in a great flow. You have a ton of energy. Like it's almost like effortless.
Yeah.
And then there's those days that are just like, oh my God, like I can't move. Like I'm just dying in this hot room for no reason.
Totally.
Like that's how it could easily feel.
Yeah.
Like I had a class like that the other day. I was like, I feel dead. Like what is wrong with me? I was like, no, like you're not dead. Like there's just a lot going on in your life right now. Like just do what you can. Like take your time. There's no rush.
That's the great thing about yoga that I think is so different for athletes. Like when you're an athlete and you finally get to that place, because in sports it's always push, and that first time that a teacher was like gave you that permission to just like sometimes you gotta pull back.
Yeah, it's like
sometimes you gotta go sideways.
Go into child's pose.
Totally.
Or like just lay down.
Yeah, and that's so
eyes.
Contrary to what that grinding mentality that athletics will teach.
That why this is definitely like a really prevalent thing to me is I've seen how that like just because again like I'm a hard worker, like I put it in, like I'll be out there 5-6 days a week, but we forget that it's like you have to take breaks, you have to pull back, you have to regroup, you just have to.
Yeah,
like
there's so much science on recovery out there now, which there didn't used to be.
But for me, it's a very personal thing because it's been something through like my road to recovery has been very different than a lot of people's. It's literally been like almost a lifelong. I mean, almost 19 years. That is the majority of my life.
Yeah.
That I've been dealing with this. And like I've seen now as my dad's gotten older, because he's had that, just like go. He played tennis, like basketball. He was big football. Like he literally actually he was offered a scholarship at the University of Pennsylvania, but because he pushed himself so hard, and his coach, I mean, it was back in the day, like in the 70s, 80s, where you dislocate your shoulder, they just pop it back in, and you're like, oh, you're playing again.
There we go.
And he was just like, oh, I want to get back out there. He's really paying for that stuff now. He has all kinds of problems with his body. He's had knee replacement, he's got neuropathy, and that just kind of really hits home for me.
Yeah. Because
I see how this stuff is preventable.
Yeah.
And it's not just like, oh, just stretch for an hour a day. Like there's a whole all-encompassing process that you almost have to create for yourself.
Yeah.
Like you have to find the right support system, and like I'm very lucky that I found the team that I did, with my chiropractor. I mean, even the gym that I was going to for a while, like I learned a ton of stuff there, and it's definitely a place I will go back to in the future once I feel like my body's ready for it. And again, like I was getting a lot of help. It was helping my body, but it's my issue with gyms. And again, I'm not trying to like bash them in any way. I think that it literally comes down to the personnel that you're working with, because I was getting results, but I would get so hyper-focused on just the workout that I would lose sight of what I was actually trying to accomplish. Which is why I switched it back over to yoga, where I was doing my own thing, and I was like, you know what, I need like some form of structure.
Yeah.
Because I think way too broadly, and I want to try and fix everything all at once. Totally. Whereas being able to go to like a class with a specific focus really just allows me to focus on one piece of the puzzle at a time, instead of trying to, like put it all together super fast and make it work. Yeah. Again, I know it's something.
Pull you away, like that's that all or nothing mentality.
Exactly,
right?
and
that'll get you.
It's just unfortunate that that's really just kind of the way our culture is right now. Like you see it in youth sports. Yeah. As you have to be a one sport athlete now, and like you from the time you're like 8 years old. Like, all right, like you're getting a volleyball scholarship, son. You know, like that's kind of I've seen it a lot. And
absolutely, and it comes with that whole keeping up mentality. And am I going to get behind? And then you get an injury and. Like, I mean, so much of it, and then your identity's tied up in that one thing. And
we try to live life so black and white, if you go for a reference, right? We'll might get in trouble for that one.
Yeah,
the political climate today.
I know. Right.
But, like, there's no, like you said, it's an all or nothing response. It's like, okay, like, this is my identity, this is what I have to do. It's like, you could totally change your mind. Like, no one says you have to do that. I mean, I've actually had conversations with people that I was, I'm very for, if I didn't have to, if I could just live on the beach in a tent, like, it would be great. I would. Yeah. But, that's not socially acceptable, and, they'd probably keep taking my house away.
Totally.
So, there's... You have to exist within the culture, but I'm, again, like, even another thing, for me, a big thing, I try to disconnect from my cell phone. Like, that's something that... It's a distraction from actually living.
So practically, how do you do that?
Just throw in my backpack when I'm at the beach and just don't look at it. Yeah. Like if it's in my bag.
So like every day? Like a period of every day or? Yeah,
if I'm at the beach, I just throw it in my bag and I just try and forget about it.
Yeah.
Like it can wait. Mm-hmm.
We've trained people. Yeah, and
we've trained people, and again, it's like instant gratification. Yeah. Like that's the age we live in right now is the age of instant gratification. And I think that for a lot of athletes, especially young ones, they're prone to a lot more like frustrations and other things. I mean, there's a whole thing on like just the expectations of kids at that age that it's like, I don't think we realize like what we're doing to people mentally, and like I did that to myself. Yeah. I've always put the pressure on me, and like I can only imagine when it's coming from, like your parents, coaches, like other players that you have to perform. It's like, I'm 15 years old. Like I don't even know what I want for breakfast. Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
Like I could barely tie my shoes. You know what I mean? Like.
Right.
So, I think what I'm trying to get across through all of this is you have to find a really good balance. And again, like we when we were in Louisiana, we got to talking about some like astrology. Like I'm actually really into astrology.
Yeah, me too.
And people are, we're both Sagittarius.
Yeah.
Like I know my whole
chart.
My whole chart. And people are like, I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, that's BS. Like, I was like, okay, that has been around for thousands of years.
Right.
They didn't just use it to, define like character traits and all those things. Like people literally use these stars to like live.
Yeah.
They could predict weather. They could predict, rainfall, like where they should be planting stuff. Like these people are really smart.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but I can't ignore something like that because they thrived without, computers and like all that kind of stuff. And they had these amazing civilizations.
Yeah.
And, I spare it, but there is evidence that a lot of the things that are in Egypt are like actually way older than they, like, for example, the Sphinx. They found evidence of water damage. Like okay, there hasn't been water in this region of the world since before the last ice age. So there's a whole bunch of different theories about how that happened. They said like maybe a comet hit, like a dirty comet, called a dirty snowball that like actually brought a lot of water, and like they think that it like iced over the northern hemisphere while the southern hemisphere was able to like thrive. But that was over an extra 20,000 years older than they originally thought everything was. So
see where your curiosity can lead you.
Yeah, and like that's what I mean. It's like this may just come across as like a lot of things that aren't very well pieced together, but I hope that like people can kind of see what I'm getting at is that I don't think that the answers a lot of people are looking for, whether it be like physically, spiritually, emotionally, are in the kind of materialistic culture that we live in right now. Mm-hmm. Like you're not going to find true meaning in stuff.
Yeah.
It's I think it's going to come from a place where you actually find your passions and you stop chasing things like money, that new car, and like you really have to like look yourself in the mirror. It's like, how do I want to live my life on my terms? And that's basically what I'm trying to do now. And I just found a really, I guess, against the grain way of doing it, but I've never been happier. I've never been more confident in my ability to succeed.
Yeah.
I know that it's going to be a journey. And again, like I'm trying to do stuff most people wouldn't even try, like consider.
But it's yours.
Right? Yeah,
That's
it's mine.
The thing.
It's mine.
Like it's unique to you.
And I just know, like I've had these episodes of almost like deja vu where I feel like I've experienced this before, but my heart tells me that it's leading me down the right path because it's like, I literally had one the other day. Like I was sitting on my couch, like talking to Cass, my girlfriend, and I was like, this has happened. Like I've lived this moment before, and it's like that weird feeling, but like something tells you it's right to just keep going forward.
Right.
And in my head, I'm like, gosh, I wonder how many people have that, and it freaks them out.
And then they ignore it.
And they ignore it and don't do anything about it.
Right.
Like they don't follow that gut instinct.
Yeah. Because it's scary.
Oh yeah, it's terrifying. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the bit I'm reading on Kundalini right now.
Right? Yeah.
Like people have these experiences, like that you have like a Kundalini awakening moment, and it scares the living hell out of people because they have no idea what they just experienced.
Yeah.
And they shy away from it.
Right.
And
stuff it back down and.
Yeah, and then that's when things kind of start to take a turn for people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's one of those very interesting things that I'm like, like just being very in tune with really just like what is going on with me at like all times.
So if you had to give 3 practical things that you think today kind of allow you to stay in that place of curiosity and figuring this stuff out, like what would the 3 things that keep you in that headspace?
Kind of to reference my well, real quick, let me kind of dive into a little bit of like why I like astrology.
Okay.
So I'm going to use the moon for example because it's like the biggest and most powerful influence on us, right? Yeah. Moon changes the tides, right? We all know that. That's proven.
Right.
Okay. So you're telling me that we're 70 to 80% water, and that big old thing up there that moves all of the freaking water in and off the shore doesn't affect us at all? Like, come on, man. Like, come on. We're mostly water.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But so for me, the astrology chart, right? That's not how I live my life.
Yeah.
It's a guideline to how I may react to things and like things that I need to be aware of about myself.
Sure.
And people always say like, wow, when I actually like did like really got into it, like it's scary how kind of like accurate it is.
You actually feel understood.
Yeah.
Right?
Like it helped me understand me. Totally. Like, but again, like the ancient cultures, they used the stars. They understood that the universe consists of nothing but energy. Like again, we can go into the physics or whatever. It's like energy is neither created or destroyed. It's all shifting, right? It's all just shifting all the time. And yeah. So okay, if there are certain energetic events happening, like at your time of birth, right?
Right.
To me, it doesn't seem far-fetched to be like, oh, that definitely has an influence over.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, we're just beginning to understand how frequencies work.
Yeah.
And if you've ever done a sound bath for yoga or whatever,
I just signed up for Sunday night.
and you're like, oh, like this works. Like I bet you feel like a brand new person.
I know. Yeah.
So that's kind of why I like it, because it's an outline to my strengths and my weaknesses, and it allows me to stay balanced because I can be aware of like, oh, okay, like I'm more prone to this. Right. And again, like some people, they can learn all that through therapy.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot, right?
Right.
But to me, it's just a guideline of how you can create balance in your life.
Yeah.
And like I pay attention to like what's happening with the moon and the different, like I've actually done like full transit readings just to be like aware of and I will say like no bullshit, like it's pretty spot on most of the time.
For what's going on in your life.
Exactly. And it's and and I personally, I don't think that I just randomly just like connect things. I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, like, well, that's that because I want it to be. It's
Yeah.
like, I'll look at my like transit guide for like that day, and it's be like, oh, like Pluto in this, sextiles, blah blah blah, and it's like emotions are high on this day. Sometimes I look at the end of the day, and I'm like, holy shit,
No, that's right.
Like
Yeah.
no wonder I was stressed for no reason, or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, and again, there's also things, but again, a lot of these people aren't aware of how like different energies affect them. Like
Yeah.
my mom's always told me, she's like, Torin, you're an empath.
Yeah.
Like I can walk into a room and like someone's having a bad day, I can point that person out
Absolutely.
like right away. But anyway,
Well, I feel like that's how you and I don't know how, like, we just,
yeah.
the first time I talked to him, I was like, either I know that guy before or, but
I mean,
yeah,
we probably did another
yeah,
life
I
or
know,
something,
exactly.
right?
So
Like,
that's the feeling. But the empath thing is huge. You have to
Mhm.
understand that you have that quality about yourself.
but again, it's like there's
then what do you do with it?
there's a positive and a negative
Yeah,
side to it, though,
totally.
right? Like there is a total dark side to being an empath.
Yeah.
That if you don't know how to control the like, because you can feel I can feel people's
Yeah.
emotions sometimes, and it's like it used to be really scary.
Oh, for sure.
Like I used to be antisocial for a while, especially when I was younger.
Yeah.
Like I was like kind of always like weird and like I was a little more awkward,
Yeah.
but because I didn't know what I
To
was
do.
experiencing, I was just like, why can I like feel all these things that aren't mine?
Yeah.
It was strange. But anyway, let's revert back to 3 things.
Yeah.
For me, knowledge.
Okay.
Like if you want answers, you can't rely on other people 100% of the time to get them for you.
Yeah.
They will start to find you once you start looking. I mean, once I started looking, it's crazy how many things I started finding that have benefited me so much. Like it is almost like a domino effect. It's like I just like knocked down the first one, and then all of a sudden it's just this,
Yep.
cataclysm of events that have led me to my chiropractor, led me to
I would
the
agree.
seminar,
Yeah.
like I mean we're sitting here having a
Yeah.
conversation, like all these
Yeah.
different things, and I will say, for the most part, everything since then's been positive since I started literally like just trying to learn more about myself, about the world, about people, just always stay hungry to learn. And that's the big one, especially about yourself, right? Like never stop learning about you because, again, another cliche, but well, theoretically, you only get to do this once, right?
Yeah.
Debatable.
Right.
My second one is like trust your gut. Like if you have an experience that seems really powerful and meaningful, don't shy away from it. Lean into it, because most of the time, I can't prove this or anything, but I would say most people I've talked to who have had those kind of like life-changing events or these bizarre experiences that like I never thought like this would change my life, that have leaned into it almost blindly sometimes.
Yeah.
It's just something. If something tells you that this is good for you, and it's like morally sound, and of course you have to be of right mind and like all these other things too. Like there's a lot of other
But that
factors
goes back
go
to
into
that, trusting your gut, knowing yourself better than you can trust your gut.
Exactly.
So, right.
Exactly. So just trust your gut. Don't be afraid to lean into new scary experiences that you may never have thought.
Yeah.
Like never did I think I would basically be like a borderline hippie, if you will. But here I am.
Yeah.
But it's right. Like, and I know, like, I'm trying to figure out the way that this all fits together, that I can use it to help people in the future. But there's also things that I want to try and accomplish too. But again, like I can see the road and how those things fit together in the future.
Yeah.
So it's just getting to that point of where I can bring it all together.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Yeah.
And my third one, and this one's like a bit more cliche, if you will, but just live your life to be happy.
And what do you think gets in the way? Like for people, like if
I know for me, it was a lot of material things, It's
Okay.
like you want to date the pretty girl, you want to make all the money, you want to drive a nice car. And, oh man, not to make this sound like it's not even really political, it's just kind of the way that we live, but I just think that the way that we live right now is like, it's basically like someone's like holding the forward button on life, right? Like it's always just go a million miles an hour. 5-6 days a week,
Yeah.
get that car, money, they want this, want that, want this, want that.
Or stature, or
Yeah, but it's like some of the happiest people that I've met have very little, or some people that have a lot, of the things that we would consider important, like money and all those things, but live very simple lives.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when I say like live your life to be happy, I'm kind of leaning more towards live more like in tune with like the earth and everything that's happening. Like try and step away. Like again, like if you have a thing for technology or whatever, that's fine. But don't forget our roots, like where we came from.
Yeah,
like because that's
going to
something
end up being a super interesting debate. I mean, my son's at Stanford, and he says, "Mom, everything they talk about is AI." Right, and I am always thinking about where is that human interface, right? That like comes, and that's a whole nother topic. But you're getting at that's the heart of where society's getting to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, everything's becoming automated. Life's just designed to be comfortable.
And yet, human connection is, to me, is like
undervalued.
It's so undervalued, and it's the thing I'm the most passionate about. And I think that comes from knowing yourself, because when you know yourself, then you turn that curiosity out, and then you can connect with other people. Exactly. And you get these conversations that are
right,
they move us forward.
And like other people exist there, like to help guide us and to help us understand ourselves better.
Yeah.
Like again, another cliche, but challenges and hardships exist to test your ability to make it through them, but that's where growth occurs.
Yeah.
Right. Like I do a lot of soma breathing.
Oh.
So basically, like playing around with like being in a hypoxic state.
Oh,
and like being able to being able to push past that like urge to breathe and just hold without oxygen just like a little bit longer. But I will say like my rate of recovery has gone through the roof.
Yeah.
My ability to just stay calm in situations.
Yeah.
Is.
Do you follow Brian McKenzie?
No, but I will.
Okay. Yeah. Brian McKenzie and Intrinsic Way. Fascinating.
I'll check those out.
For sure. So.
Anyway. But yeah, just being able to overcome like that's the thing. Like the challenges and everything, they exist for us to grow as people.
Yeah.
And whether even if you fail at meeting a challenge, like again, the big Michael Jordan one, right? Like oh, he didn't make his high school team, he became like the best dude ever, arguably. But that's true though. Yeah. Like failure is part of learning to succeed. Like if you get it right the first time, cool. Yeah. But there's going to be something else that's going to come along.
Yeah, that's, in that level up process, there's always going to be a point.
Yeah, it's continue. Yeah. Like, I mean, how many volleyball matches have I lost?
Right.
A lot. A lot. Especially the last couple of years. Like, there's a lot of things I'm learning about myself and how to play this game.
Yeah.
And to me, though, it's the best thing ever. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. So. And you have this deeper journey that puts that all in perspective. And I think that for the next generation is like it's a great example to be setting, because there is, as much as we love the sport, like I'm now old, like my body's failing me and I can't do what I want, what I used to do, but I still love it. You're like still on the come up, but you're dealing with all this physical stuff.
I'm literally on the come up physically too. Yeah, that's the ironic thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And then like you have all these kids that are processing through this sport and so many others that they're going to battle all the same stuff. And
well, so I have to touch on this. This is like a very like big passion of mine with kids, right?
Yeah.
So part of that summer I learned was about footwear.
Okay.
Right, and how a lot of the footwear that we wear. I mean, geez, like if you just look at the shape of a shoe, like it's
I'm not a fan of shoes.
Yeah, I mean, I wear like what they call like functional footwear, like nice wide ankle, so like cotton shoes. They're super comfortable, and like I can splay my toes and everything in them.
And what brand?
I wear Zero shoes.
Okay.
I also am a big fan of like Vivo footwear.
Okay.
But just seeing like X-rays of like what it's done to people, and like I have a handful of friends who are my age, a little bit younger than me, that have these really gnarly bunions already.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you have that already? It's like, if anyone is a candidate for a bunion, it should be me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I played basketball for years, but again, I became consciously aware of it, and it's kind of been like a mission of mine to like correct it and educate. But I'll use an example. I was asked to, because my chiropractor, she asked my opinion and like help for things. So I was asked to talk to a parent of one of her patients. He's 17, 18, whatever, and has a really bad buddy. And I'm like,
That's
you're
super young.
17, 18. It's like, okay. And again, like through just how we've come up, you know, like we don't even realize it, but we've been conditioned to think a certain way, right? Especially about shoes or whatever it may be, right? Like all these big brands, you gotta have the new Nikes. And again, I was one of those kids, you know, I was like, I gotta have the new Air Jordans, you know. Yeah. So I was talking to this parent. She's like, oh, well, what brand of shoe would you recommend? I was like, okay, like this is going to be sound unorthodox, but just hear me out. You don't want a shoe with support. You don't want a shoe with cushion. You basically just want something for protection, so your foot can so you can use it in its natural way. I was like, I'm telling you, that's why his son has a bunion, because he's been jamming his feet in these narrow shoes that make your toes do that, which pulls that big toe back across, which you can see. It shoots that right out. Yeah. And immediately the response was, oh, but, you know, like I showed her shoes that I recommend. She's like, oh, I don't think there's enough cushion, you know, he hits a lot. I was like, okay, but I promise you, like, your feet are designed to take a beating. Like, agreed. 100%. Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I joke.
I could go for hours.
I joke that I don't play any sports anymore. Like, I don't wear shoes. Like, beach volleyball, yoga, and swimming. Like, and every time I go for a walk in my running shoes, I'm like, I feel like I punished my feet. So I'm with you on the shoes thing. So that's why I was asking. So you said Zero brand?
Yeah, Zero shoes, but with an X, like Xero.
Okay.
Shoes. Yeah, or Vivo Barefoot. There's a bunch of them kind of like coming out, but those are the ones that I've been wearing. And I love them. Like I wear them to work. And I mean, I spend hours with my feet at work. Like I'm bartend. You know, I'm
totally.
there for like 6, 8 hours.
It goes right back to where the story started with
my feet.
Your foot at 10 years old.
It all started with my foot. It's funny how it's come full circle, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I love doing this. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And I do, like, my greatest hope is that it helps people in the next generation, because I just love when generations share their stories, and like when people are ready to hear them, they learn from them. So yours is super interesting, and I think we could go on for hours.
No, I
really think.
Like I said, you can't give me the floor. I'll keep going.
Okay. Well, we'll do it some more, but it's super enlightening. So keep being curious, because I love the stuff you're learning about.
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah,
it was a pleasure to get to.
Sure. Oh, and where do you have a platform or anywhere that you put out some of the stuff?
I'm working on it. Again, like I'm trying to design a way that it's a little more cohesive, because right now it's a lot of to me it doesn't feel like grasping at straws, but I know if I present it to people, like, because I've talked about it a lot enough, that it feels like I'm grasping at a lot of different straws. Yeah. Whereas I'm trying to see how it all weaves together, because it's
again parallel with my story, and sometimes I get really more fascinated about the astrology, because that's a lot of what I've been doing. You just stay on that road, and
right. Again, I guess
it does come together.
I would just reference like the prana in yoga, right? Like the non-physical body, that like energy, and like being aware of that. I'm trying to basically tie that, like spirituality and the physical body, like all together, and explain it in a way that makes sense to the majority of people. Yeah. Because I know that there's people like yourself and myself that like understand what I'm getting at. Yeah. But I would probably say like 99% of people, they'll be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, like I felt it. Yeah. But the more you do this, the more you connect with your people, and then you realize there's a parallel universe that's we're going this way. Yes. Like, who's going to come with us? But there's a lot more people than
they call it the stages of man. Oh, okay. I think it was from like Hinduism. There's 4 of them, and right now they would technically fall under the materialistic stage. Okay. And then there's kind of like an awakening stage, and then like a flourishing stage, where man kind of gets back in touch with nature.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, it would be. It would be.
So where can people find you on social media?
Beachy_Torin. Torin spelled Torin.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, we'll put that in the notes, and I thank you so much for doing this. This is super fun.
Pleasant, yes. So, I needed this today.
Good. I'm glad. I know it's funny how that works. Yeah. So, very good. Well, thanks for coming.
No, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.